Here are 25 things I love about Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Number 1. The opening. Is there anything better than the opening of a Star Wars movie? The blue text on the black starry background reading, "A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away," only to be interrupted with perhaps the most iconic movie score of all time that I can't play unless I want a copyright strike. It gets me pumped. John Williams with an utter masterpiece of an opening song. And this is going to be the only time John Williams is mentioned in this video. Number 2, the name Phantom Menace itself. I just think it's a great name. It sets up a movie-long mystery. The audience immediately begins to wonder, well, what or who is the Phantom Menace? And on top of that, I just think that it sounds cool and is catchy. Number 3, the time period. The idea of the prequels themselves. Set 32 years before the original trilogy, it's great for us as Star Wars fans, and it would have been great back in the day, especially when this was first released, to see how life was and how society operated before the rise of the Empire. One key part of this that I really enjoy is the fact that we actually get to see the Jedi in their heyday. By the time the original Star Wars trilogy comes around in the storyline, Jedi are practically gone. So it's a complete shift to actually see them running about the place. Plus, as will be talked about in other videos, setting it before the originals means that we'll perhaps get to see the origins of this Clone Wars that was alluded to in A New Hope. Number 4, the planets. I love the new planets that we are introduced to in this movie. They are new, fresh feeling, and varied. The two standouts obviously being Naboo and Coruscant, but even still, it's great to revisit Tatooine and in fact get to see a different, darker side of Tatooine. Naboo is a beautiful planet with its Mediterranean architecture in the city, the varied landscapes that cover the planet. We see everything from the underwater home of the Gungans to the Naboo city itself to the green plains that we get to see at the end of the movie. And Coruscant, if you've only watched the originals by this point, is something like you've never seen before. You've got landmarks like the Senate buildings, the pristine Jedi temple, and as we'll see in the other prequel movies, a seedy underbelly. Great all round. Number 5, the music. Now, we'll talk about that one later on in this video, but there's other great scores in this movie other than that one. Anakin's child theme, thriving with innocence and wonder, the High Council meeting and Qui-Gon's funeral with its hints of the Imperial March laced throughout it and its somber tone overall, all the way to the celebration song at the end with its uplifting energy titled Argy's Great Municipal Band and end credits. A real tongue twister on that one. John Williams, another fantastic job. Number 6, the costuming. I don't know how to explain it, but I just love the costumes and outfits that we get to see in this movie. Ranging from the Jedi robes and the variations that we see in the Jedi Council to Qui-Gon's version of the robes with the poncho that we get to see on Tatooine, to the Naboo guards outfits, to Palpatine's outfits, to Darth Maul's outfit, to basically all of Padme's clothes. I just love it. I don't know what else to say. It's unique and varied. Number 7, the design. This includes the designs of the starships that we get to see, including the weird, reflective, mirror-like Naboo ship, which looks epic, all the way to the massive Federation droid control ship. It also includes the designs of the aliens in this movie that we get to see, Jar Jar Binks, and by proxy, all of the other Gungans, Newt Gunray, Watto, Zabulba, and others are just some examples of uniquely designed aliens that helps the viewer to be transformed into an entirely different world, to be immersed in it. Now that we've talked about general things that I love about this movie, let's now talk about specific characters that I love in Phantom Menace. Number 8, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Ewan McGregor is Obi-Wan Kenobi. I love Alec Guinness. I love his performance in the originals, but when I think of Obi-Wan, I think of Ewan McGregor. Maybe that's because of the fact that I grew up with him as my Obi-Wan. Maybe it's because that version of Obi-Wan that we get to see in the prequels has been featured more heavily in shows like Clone Wars. Maybe it's because of all the memes. But I do at least think that some of it, if not a big part of it, has to do with his acting. I love his performance in this movie, and spoilers, I'm going to be making this same point in the other prequel movies as well. He's probably, over the entire trilogy, to me, the best actor. Now, that's not to take away from the other actors, it's just to showcase how good he really is. He is Obi-Wan down to the T, including great dad jokes, such as,
"You were right about one thing, Master. The negotiations were short."
Number 9, Qui-Gon Jinn. To me, Qui-Gon Jinn is what the Jedi should be. He's a Jedi who fights for the light side of the Force, yet he is not so stringent and stagnant that he's a slave to the whims and wishes of the Jedi Council. He's a Jedi with emotion, not trying to suppress the emotion, but follow its whims, to a point, of course. As he tells Obi-Wan, he has to be mindful of the living Force, and it seems as if Qui-Gon himself is practicing what he's preaching. Plus, he's just great in this movie. He's powerful in the Force, skillful with a lightsaber, and for the relatively short time that we get to know him, he's one of the best Jedi that we ever come across. Number 10, the relationship between Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon. I love the way that these two play off each other. You get the feeling that these two have a deep history between each other, just from the way that they interact with each other. I love the interplay between these two. There's also other characters in this movie that I love, like number 11, Padme. A great subversive character who doesn't just sit around all day, but actually brings the fight to the bad guys. The reveal of her true nature, her true status as queen near the end of the movie is a great reveal, and an unexpected one at that. Also, little Josh may have had a crush on Padme when he was younger, so there's that as well. Number 12, R2-D2. R2-D2 is always great in these movies, but on top of his usual greatness, it's great to see R2 save the day as the crew's escaping Naboo, and it's great to actually see where R2 began his involvement in the Skywalker saga story. Number 13, Young Anakin. To the perhaps surprise of some people, I do love Young Anakin in this movie. He says some cringy stuff, but of course he does. He's a kid, for goodness sake. But other than that, Young Anakin is still great in this movie. There's some really heartwarming, gut-wrenching scenes that he's a part of. We'll talk about one of them later on, but a small favorite of mine is the scene of Anakin on his pod racing bike before the race. And that moment of pure innocence, that moment of childlike joy when he screams, "It's working," it's so good. And on top of that, he is the heart of the movie, which we'll get to talking about that a bit more in depth later on. Number 14, Shmee Skywalker. I also really enjoy Shmee Skywalker in this movie. Such a gentle, believable, mother-like performance. A mother who truly wants what's best for her son. She knows deep down that Anakin cannot stay in this situation on Tatooine. So she pushes Anakin to leave her and to begin his journey across the stars. A great performance, a great role model, and a key part of this trilogy. Then we get to the villains. Number 15, the droids. I really enjoy the droids in this movie. They are, for lack of a better term, the comic relief in this movie, other than Jar Jar himself. But they are also a threat, and there's a great range and variety amongst them. The battle droids with their bumbling, awkward ignorance, to the droidekas with their very cool design rolling towards the enemy, only to stop, create an energy shield around them for their protection, and start blasting. It's very creative. I love the droids in this movie. Number 16, Darth Maul. What is there new to say about Darth Maul that hasn't already been said? The fact that people loved his character so much in this movie that Spoilers, Dave Filoni brought him back as a main character in the Clone Wars animated series. And in that series, Filoni expands upon Maul's character greatly, but in this movie, Darth Maul portrays the silent Sith assassin. He looks cool with his red skin, Zabrakian tattoos, and he's just cool, a stoic performance for a Sith Punisher. Number 17, Sheev Palpatine / Lord Sidious. The Phantom Menace himself. Ian McDiarmid is so good, not only in this movie, but in this trilogy as a whole. Playing contrasting roles, weaving in and out between the roles of Sheev Palpatine, lovable Naboo Senate member, to Lord Sidious himself, his true form, the evil, manipulative, Machiavellian genius, orchestrating this entire conflict between the Republic and the Trade Federation, just so that he can get into power and reshape this Republic into the Galactic. Well, we're not quite there yet. Now that we've went through all the characters that I, and perhaps you love about this movie, let's now talk about specific scenes that I love in our third and final section. Number 18, Qui-Gon cutting through the door. So why do I love this scene so much? Well, it's for two reasons. Number one, it's just a really cool scene. Qui-Gon plunging his lightsaber through the metal doors of the Trade Federation's ship, showing us the true deadliness of the lightsaber itself. On top of that, another thing that I love about this scene is the reverence and fear shown to the Jedi. They are portrayed like legendary figures, like real-life myths. Number 19, the first meeting of C-3PO and R2-D2 / dinner scene. I'm putting these two together because they come right after each other. Looking first at the meeting of C-3PO and R2-D2. This is a small favourite scene of mine, but I just love this type of thing. This is fan service that I can really get behind. The first meeting of C-3PO and R2-D2. Some classic banter between these two. I just really enjoy it. Secondly, the dinner scene. I really enjoy the character moments that we see in this scene. From Anakin's deduction of Qui-Gon being a Jedi, all the way to Anakin's willingness to help Qui-Gon and Padme in fixing their ship, and the smile that creeps across Shmee's face of proudness, of the fact that her son is so quick to offer his help. It's a great scene. Number 20, the pod racing scene. This scene is so unbelievably good. I love everything about it. It's like a mini movie inside this movie. This movie literally sets around 15 minutes worth of its own runtime to this specific scene, and it's a wonderful use of its time. High drama, high stakes, a high amount of action. It's something completely different that we had never seen before up until this point in a live-action Star Wars movie. You've got the sheer diverse lineup of different aliens and pod racing machines. You've got the scale and spectacle with the massive crowd that's there. The flag demonstration hyping all of the proceedings up. The sound design is fantastic in this pod race. The different sounds of the different pod racing machines. And then you've got the race itself. Zabulba attempting to sabotage Anakin before the race starts, setting Anakin in the underdog role before the race even begins, with his pod racer not even getting going at the start. The explosions, the Tusken Raiders adding extra danger from afar. Zabulba knocking out the competition thanks to his cheating, Anakin overcoming that cheating in creative ways, to the fact that there's only the sounds of the pod races as our soundtrack until the final lap when John Williams' score comes crashing back in to ratchet up the tension. It is fantastic, and I encourage you to watch it. Even if you've already seen it, I encourage you to take the time to watch it again. It's so good, and it's so satisfying to see Anakin win. I love it. I was so hyped watching this scene that I started tearing up. Fantastic. Number 21, leaving Tatooine. A pure gut-wrenching scene to begin with, especially when you know what follows in the next couple of movies. Anakin running back to his mother, his only way of life, giving a final goodbye hug, saying that he can't do this without her. Anakin asking his mother, will I ever get to see you again? Only to have Shmee reply with, what does your heart say? And yet, even still, she knows that deep down, she'll most likely never see her son again. And yet, Anakin promises in vain that he'll come back and free his mother one day. And his mum, Shmee, replies, "Be brave. Don't look back. Don't come back." And yet a couple of seconds later, we have Darth Maul coming, sweeping in at the end to attack Qui-Gon, just when he's about to enter the ship. And then we also get to see Anakin meeting Obi-Wan for the first time. I'm sure Obi-Wan, when first looking at this kid, didn't quite imagine where he would be ending up because of him. Number 22, Palpatine's manipulation and Chancellor Valorum getting voted off. This is a short one. I just love seeing political Palpatine in action once again with his manipulation of the entire Naboo situation, his subtle political power moves, the Phantom Menace in action once again. We're going to skip ahead to the end of the movie here because the end of this movie is just insane. Number 23, the double-bladed lightsaber reveal. So awesome. Do I even need to explain why this scene is so cool? Just when you think Darth Maul can't get any cooler, he busts out the double-bladed lightsaber, which leads into number 24, Duel of the Fates. You could make a very strong case that this is the best Star Wars duel in the entire franchise. In fact, you could go even further than that. You can make a strong case that this could be the best Star Wars scene ever, full stop, period. From the very opening of this scene to the end, it's just non-stop. Up until this point, we never had seen a three-person lightsaber duel, and it instantly makes it unique amongst the other duels that we have seen. Plus, this new type of acrobatic lightsaber dueling is great to see. There's something so cool about seeing the Jedi at the height of their power and at the height of their abilities, using those power and using those abilities. Some favorite parts of the duel for me is when Darth Maul force points a droid's head to open the door, the close-ups that we get to see of our three participants, the feint that Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon do to Maul, showing the history that these two have with such a simple motion, the force jump that Obi-Wan does into the full-on sprint, and then the moment that everything just stops. And then we get that one move, that one flick of the saber, that scream, and that score. After rewatching this, I never realized how much I loved Qui-Gon as a character. But honestly, thinking about it, he's probably my favorite Jedi, if not favorite character in this whole movie. And technically speaking, he could have carried an entire trilogy on his back, but he just wasn't able to match up to Maul in this moment. After this, we then get a glimpse of Maul versus Obi-Wan, and the pure speed and quickness between these two is something spectacular. Maul knocks Obi-Wan down the massive hole in the middle of the room, where it looks as if Obi-Wan is done for, and yet with one move, with one jump, using his fallen master's lightsaber, Obi-Wan jumps towards the high ground and delivers the final blow of the duel, the seemingly final blow to Darth Maul, cutting him in half. Obi-Wan rushes over to his master Qui-Gon, and even in his final moments, Qui-Gon isn't thinking of himself. He's thinking of one person. Anakin, promise me you will train the boy. He is the chosen one. He will bring balance. Train him. If you want to hear more about this scene by itself and the significance of it, there's a Dave Filoni interview where he specifically talks about this scene. Links will be in the description. Basically, to summarize, he makes the point that this Duel of the Fates isn't for the fate of Naboo. I mean, technically it is, but beyond that, it's a duel for the fate of Anakin himself. That's why I mentioned earlier that Anakin is at the heart of this movie. This duel is for the fate of this child. Depending on how this fight went, Anakin's fate would have been completely changed. I'd encourage you to watch the video. Number 25, the ending. We've got the funeral scene of Qui-Gon, a truly sad scene, only to be contrasted with a nice big ol' celebration to end the movie, and to end Star Wars: The Phantom Menace.